The god of thunder and steel. Talking about yourself, not the Zeus 2 controller we're reviewing today. I'm not going to be wearing this attire for the remainder of the video. It's going to be a rather long one, timestamped, with chapters on the timeline of the video, so feel free to jump around as we review the Zeus 2. A quick disclaimer for my audience, the Stallions and Stallionettes, this controller was sent for review, but this is going to be an honest, comprehensive review. I haven't been paid or told to say or not say anything about this controller. The company doesn't get an early preview, and the thoughts in this video are 100% my own. Now, this I just simply don't like to see. I was looking for the manufacturer's landing page so I could go over a summary of the key features, why you would want to pick up this controller that's more expensive than a standard controller. However, that site doesn't exist, at least not here on the first page of Google. What you're going to get is Amazon, which is the platform that I do recommend picking this controller up at. It's the link that's going to be down there in the description below. You're going to have a little extra layer of customer support versus buying from Beitong. You're going to find some Reddit articles. The trigger feels great, very smooth, a good amount of travel, and blah, 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 blah. And of course, you're going to find this controller sold on websites like MiniXPC, AliExpress, Walmart, hello, $140. That is the same price on Amazon. Free delivery, 90-day returns. If you just don't like it, doesn't work out for you. Gadget Hyper, probably wouldn't buy from you either. But on this Amazon page, we are going to get a breakdown of the key features. A couple things that you are going to notice. This does rock potentiometer thumbstick modules, not Hall effects, so it is susceptible to getting stick drift at any possible time. 1000 Hz stock polling rate, that does not apply to the dongle. And you have detachable, modular, swappable parts, but a lot of the stock ones feel like crap and have now been relocated to the trash bin. This does have 6-axis gyro motion aiming, which is actually called Soma Sensory, an AI shortcut. It's a special feature from Beitong, but in practice, it felt the same on the Switch side of the house with the motion control, and about the same as a Fly Digi controller on the PC side of the house, which are usually freakishly responsive. And I use them for a standard or base point for what pro controllers should feel like with gyroscope motion aiming. You do have an AI shortcut button, which we'll talk about its functionality during the software or application tour. You can do things like take a screenshot, record gameplay clips, but where the fuck do they record to? Nowhere that I would really want to shove game files. You've got a bunch of included accessories and no carrying case to put them, so get a Ziploc. Now, for search engine optimization, they of course have included that you have Hall triggers, which is not nearly as much as a selling feature as having Hall effect thumbstick modules because the triggers aren't as much of a point of failure, and also the feasible difference between traditional spring-loaded trigs and then Hall effect triggers, which generally have more steps of adjustment, pretty much unnoticeable, or nobody gives a shit is the way that I should word that. But manufacturers can get the words Hall or Hall effect in there, and gamers searching for Hall effect thumbstick modules might accidentally pick up a controller because it's got Hall effect trigs. You do have 1 year of warranty coverage from Beitong.
And now for something completely different.
This is a rather large box, and since it is a normal size controller, not like a Duke situation, there is a high chance that this controller is inside of a carrying case, or there's a separate box with some included accessories. Tons of Chinese characters on the front, top, side of this ride, as well as on the back, showing the key features. There really isn't hardly any English on here other than the company name Beitong, but on the bottom you will have the model, which is the Zeus 2 optical micro switch. That is a separate model. There's a Zeus 2 and then there's the optical version, which does have the swappable face buttons. An easy way to separate this from the other ones is it's more expensive than its counterparts. You have a couple of wafer stickers that will need slice, and your controller is going to be held in place, not in a carrying case like I assumed, just in this plastic, no laser cut foam or anything. For a $140 controller, I don't know what I expected, but it wasn't this. If the suction of your controller doesn't pick up this plastic tray, there is a little hole for your finger of choice. I like the index, and so does this tray. Then you are going to have your accessories at the bottom. You do have a smaller box, which is going to be your face button modules. Again, Chinese characters on here. Other than the picture, you don't really know what's going on in here if you're an English-speaking individual. Go fuck yourself. You've got your gamepad assistant, which is the software program or application, which of course there will be a tour in this video. Tons of accessories. What the actual fuck, Beitong? So I was unboxing these accessories to lay them out all nice and succulent for your corneas. The face buttons just came spilling out, made a loud noise, startled me, jarred me a little bit, and more importantly than that, I now need to reslot these face buttons that just poured out on my desk. So be cautious, cognizant of that when you're unboxing it. And now personally, I think this is unacceptable. This controller should absolutely be in a carrying case. If you're going to have all these loose accessories. It's like $7 to source a generic unbranded carrying case from Amazon, probably even cheaper for these companies that buy them in bulk, so please include it.
Included accessory-wise, you do have a 10-foot USB-C cable. It is braided, not microfiber or rubber. You do have a lot of plastic on the USB A and C end. It is stamped or branded with the Beitong logo. You do have a 2.4 gigahertz dongle. We'll be testing the speeds of this and trying to overclock it later. If it comes unpaired, you have a resync button and a status light to let you know what the fuck's going on. You have 3 D-pad options, as well as a 4th one that is pre-installed. Don't forget about him, because I almost did. You've got 2 metal wheels, and for the life of me, I can't figure out the difference. Oh, wait, hold on. Oh, yeah, I can. Only an imbecile could not. This is plastic. This is metal. So do you have a preference of surface material on your fingertips? I do. It's metal. On a premium or pro controller, things like metal, rubber, maybe wood, premium materials, that's what I like to feel and smell and touch and taste. So I'm going to set this one aside. These are going to go in trash. Just kidding. What they should go into is an included carrying case. Take notes, Beitong, on what can be changed for your next controller. These face button modules are included with the base version Zeus 2, and to my knowledge, this one is only included with the optical version. It comes in a separate box. If I'm incorrect in that, the fact that these two come with the standard Zeus 2 and this one is only with the Zeus 2 optical version, one of you controller experts, please correct me in the comment section below. Check out the sound of these bad boys. Whew, little loud, hollow, and clacky, but that's because I'm holding the module. If it was installed on the controller, it'll sound a little bit more solid and funky and in place. Now, if your buttons do pop out like mine did, it is very easy to get them back because you cannot put the wrong button in the wrong slot. They have different prongs or cutouts to drop in. They slot in. I really don't like the fact that there's no back plate for these face buttons, so when you drop them in, you have to very carefully pick this module up, and if you turn this upside down or sideways, the buttons just spill out and you have to repeat the process. This was a part in the box for me, which I'm assuming it's not supposed to be. So the 2 modules that were included with the standard Zeus 2 in the box feel like they're held together with more than just clips, like maybe those screws are doing something to hold the housing together. As we're over here, as you can see, it's already coming apart, and it's kind of just held on with friction. As for included thumbstick cap options, which are present, take notes, TB Stealth Ultra. These are just held on with friction. The pre-installed joints are mid-rise concave, which do have a unique shape of the thumbstick cap, which we'll talk about in just a second. Then you have a second pair, which is maybe shorter. It actually appears to be the same exact height. And then you have these high-rise sticks, which are technically more of a mid-rise. They could be a little bit higher, but we are going to check KontrolFreek compatibility later in this video to add you a little bit more height and grip. And to swap those, they are just held on with friction. Give them a little pinch and pull, and they pop off very easily. You can only snap them in one way, the right way. When I engage the macro lens, you can see a beautiful paint job, metal flake, and you can see your pogo pins in there, metal pads right there that make contact with each other. The pre-installed module was clicky, mechanical. Pretty gosh darn loud, even installed on the controller, and also does not feel very secure, hollow and clacky for mechanical buttons. Oh, okay. Those are the ones that fall out on you. These are membrane, typical of a stock controller, so if you prefer that feeling, that mushy, squishy, can get stuck in on you at any possible moment feeling of a stock controller, which a lot of gamers do, I've heard about it in my comment section, this is up your alley. Shove it up your alley, why don't you? Or mechanical clicky bits, because in my opinion, that's what belongs on a pro controller. Anything that's more expensive than a standard controller should have face buttons that do not feel like a standard controller. This man's speaking a little bit too much logic today. Go ahead and drop it in, why don't you? Oh, you just spoiled the face button section, Kevin. To swap D-pads, you actually need to remove the faceplate, and I wish there was an included tool to remove these suckers, because you need to get a fingernail, or for me personally, I actually had to use a pen tip to remove the stock pre-installed 4-point D-pad, and I'm gonna say that the pre-installed 4-point and all the plastic D-pad accessories feel horrendous. The plastics just feel terrible, absolutely terrible. But since there is an included metal option, I'm going to opt for that. And there is a correct way to install this D-pad. See how the top has a little cut out? Boom, there you go. There's also one right there, so and I'm gonna go with the high right stick as well. This is how I like her configured. This is absolutely one of those controllers that could look okay in pictures and videos, but you have to take this man's word for it. This controller looks like a dusted bag of tricks. In layman's terms, it looks pretty horrendous. You have a lot going on here, and call me a boomer, but I really don't like to see AI front and center on my controller staring me in the face, feeling like John Connor. I gotta be fighting AI left and right.
Also, the thumbstick caps have this little pattern, which is a little bit too rambunctious when you combine it with the fact you have a metal D-pad, a white face button module, and then up top this is some super cheap plastic on the bumpers and triggers, which has this pattern that doesn't match with anything else. Then you got the rubber grips, which don't match up with the silver, the bumpers and triggers, and I hate the RGB implementation, which isn't even on at the moment. And I know this is jumping ahead to the accessory button suite, but there is a shitload going on. You got toggles and buttons on the bottom. You do have a 3.5mm headphone jack. I like to see that. But then how do you turn the sucker on? That is going to be up top right here by the USB-C port. All that just to show you that I think this RGB lighting looks bad. I don't think it's implemented very well, and I would just turn it off to save battery life as I'm going to. As for the ergonomics or comfort, it is a very comfortable controller as it is using a typical Xbox One or Series shape and shell design. It does have rubber grips around back, which do feel great. They also cover a large surface area. They wrap around all the way to here and all the way up to here. So more surface area is covered. They also feel incredibly soft, supple, squishy, which means these could break down pretty quickly, trading a little bit of long-term durability for some initial comfort, but these do feel super nice. And then the rear buttons being sunk flush with the rear shell do not cut into comfort negatively at all. I'm gonna go ahead and give comfort a 9 out of 10. This thing is actually really comfortable. As for perceived build quality, this is another gamepad that can confuse the senses because it feels like, it could be hella premium. You've got these rubberized grips, you've got these mechanical face buttons and D-pad, but then you realize 80% of the controller is covered in plastic, and the surface plastics do feel incredibly cheap, flimsy, hollow, tinny, even though the face pad module is snapped into place with 2 clips, and it does feel secure in gameplay, but you can still get a little bit of side-to-side player wiggle out of it. And I think the biggest problem for me is just the fact that everything feels different. You've got this kind of matte, grippy plastic up here, metal D-pad. The caps don't really feel good because of this pattern. I know that's not really a build quality issue, it's more of a comfort, but hey, just bear with me. These sound and feel incredibly cheap. The bumpers, not these suckers, these feel great, but the standard bumpers right here, also sticking really far upward. Also some pretty weird panel gaps over here by the triggers. You can see the clips in there. I'm gonna go ahead and give the, Jesus Christ, I'm gonna go ahead and give the build quality, perceived build quality if you shall. Do this with your fingernail and get it right up in there in the LED RGB light bar. These should be removed. This and this, the whole RGB lighting, just get it out of there. Give it a 4 out of 10. Now the face or action buttons have a lot said about them on the landing page. Well, not the manufacturer's landing page, but the Amazon one that summarized some of the key features. But there's nothing touted or praised about the D-pad, but it definitely is mechanical, so I guess we could venture a guess that they are the same mechanical switches that's used in the face button modules, although that's a dangerous road to trek on because there's 2 different variants. There's the actual mechanical switches, and then there's the opticals, which use a light beam being broken. It'd be great if there was some information as to what's used in here, if there's any kind of a tap life cycle, but what I can pass on or relay to my audience is how they feel. I actually threw in the trash the plastic versions because they felt horrendous, super slippery, and just felt like they could break at any possible moment. This metal option isn't much better because it is this unique shape, which isn't going to cut you or anything, but it's a little jagged on the edges and doesn't feel as good as a typical round, circular, buckler shield shaped D-pad, which this is all fancy with these sharp, jagged lines, and it's not a Lamborghini. It doesn't have to look like this. Form over function, or wait, other way around. Functionality over appearance here with the D-pad, but the only included option that I liked at all was the option I have installed right now, and I will say the actuation force is pretty damn good. A little bit heavier than I'd like, but I would actually rather have my D-pads be on the heavier side to where I'm not getting false actuations versus too light to where all my diagonal inputs are bleeding together. So this isn't terrible by any means. I'm gonna go ahead and give the D-pad a 6 out of 10. As for the face or action buttons, you do have 3 included options with the Zeus 2 mechanical, and you are getting 64% faster speeds by going the optical mechanical switches, which much like the one-handed Razer keyboards that I've tested on the channel that use the optical mechanical switches, it is a beam of light being broken, not an actual mechanical switch being actuated. So in essence, that should be a lot faster, although I will say it doesn't really transfer over on a controller as much as it does as having optical switches on something like a mouse or a keyboard, in my personal opinion, and I did not like the way the optical switches felt, and I felt like they should have just been left out completely, but the mechanical option is not terrible. It is a little bit louder than I'd like, and the actuation force is much, much lighter to where if you just rest your little meaty thumb thumb on there, it's probably gonna press the button when you don't want to. Also, the surface plastics used, as you can see, very round buttons like an Xbox, which I don't like. I prefer the flatter buttons of PlayStation controllers, but the plastics are also real slick and glossy and yucky. And the depressing thing is, Beitong spent a lot of time and energy and probably money developing their buttons, because that's the primary feature of this controller, is the fact that you have 3 swappable modules. They talk about it on the landing page. I don't like them, unfortunately. The best option here is the mechanicals, which I have installed right now, and they're very, very light to where I'm getting false actuations, and they don't sound very good. And you can also get a lot of side-to-side player wiggle out of that module, which shouldn't happen if it's held in place with 2 clips. 5 out of 10 for the face buttons. 5 out of 10. As for the accessory button suite, little praise where praise is due. 3.5mm headphone jack, but it is super confusing. This dashboard, you got function, profile, this toggle right here, and then an on-off switch up top. I hate additional accessory buttons like turbo and macro and all this extra crap, doodads and gadgets and bits. But what I hate even more than that is when companies move the start and select button, or pause and options, whatever you want to call them, to an awkward spot, which luckily these are in a good accessible place. If you do have a high left stick, you might have to reach up and over to hit this guy, but that happens on almost any controller. Really hate that says AI there. Hate the RGB that's included in this accessory button suite, which overall I'm gonna give a 4 out of 10. Now in the thumbstick department, these are not Hall effect thumbstick modules. They are typical potentiometers, which I know is a deal breaker for a lot of you. One of the features listed on that Amazon product comparison between all the models was that this has 3 height adjustable sticks. Yeah, we know about that, but that there's also anti-drift tech in this sucker.
Pre-war tech.
Not that it has Hall effect thumbstick modules, because they're potentiometer, but there's anti-wear tech. Don't know what that means, but we're going to take a look at it during that teardown. There is no anti-friction rings, at least no visible ones. However, the plastic around the outside of the thumbstick gates is freakishly slick, so you're gliding when you're at full lock. Clicking down L3 and R3, pretty taut and secure, good resistance, typical range of motion and travel. These feel pretty good. Get them to the PC.
Over here in Gamepad Tester, and I want to see how she do. And right now she doesn't do anything. Turn it on, the top.
Awesome. We are recognized as an Xbox controller, an X input device, which by default is going to be recognized by a pewter as an Xbox 360 controller. The ads that pop up on every controller site are crazy, absolutely crazy. That's why I prefer applications over sites. Anyway, as you can see, these bad boys snap back to a perfect resting value, a perfectly calibrated neutral, if you shall, of 0.00002. According to my Gamepad Tester guide from about a year and a half ago, which is outdated and there's a little more information that I should add, another common resting value is 0.00392. That is true. After testing hundreds of gamepads, a little phlegm in there because that's how many controllers. Those are the 2 most common resting values that I've seen from both potentiometer and Hall effect thumbstick modules. Good, very good here on the average error rate. Circular thumbstick modules, lower number better here. If they're square, the average error could be higher, but as long as everything's looking even, no cause for concerns here. These are looking good. I'm liking them, but they are potentiometer. As for the bumpers and triggers, you all know I am a big fan of extra bumpers. We're talking about controllers like the Razer Wolverine. There's a couple of other controllers that do that as well. I can't think of any of them off the top of the dome, but the Razer controllers have done it for years. Positioning is almost identical here to where you can hit the triggers, you can hit the bumpers, and then right there in the middle point, easily accessible, is a second set of bumpers. I absolutely love these. They're labeled as M5 and M6. Sounds like a couple of BMW models, but hopefully reliability is better on these suckers. They are clicky, mechanical. I like the shape of them too. You can hit them right there. But then the actual bumpers, I don't believe they're mechanical, but if they are, the clicky bits on the inside, the guts, do not feel very good. Also, the surface plastics on the outside looks kind of cool with this pattern, but doesn't do shit for grip. Hey, can you compensate for the light, please? Okay. Also, they look silly because the bumpers stick so high off the top. They are on a swivel or hinge mechanism, but luckily you can hit them easily with the meat or tip of your index finger, but they just don't feel the best. They also look silly. Give the bumpers a 4 out of 10. As for the triggers, they do have on-off trigger stops, which aren't a mechanical click. Rather, it is a lever that slides out and physically stops the trigger from being pulled. Very reminiscent of the Microsoft Elite controllers.
You can engage and disengage these in-game without turning the controller around and looking at it. And when engaged, they do cut out about 95% of the trigger pull. Good range of motion or travel when they are not engaged. But again, the plastics don't feel very good. I'm gonna go ahead and give the triggers a 6.5 out of 10. There's nothing in this beautiful instruction manual about how to rebind the rear buttons on the fly. There's also no included carrying case, so I grabbed a Ziploc bag from the kitchen. That's what the accessories are gonna live in. Also on this little placard, it's recommending I download an instruction manual from their website. Ergonomically, I am a big fan of these rear buttons. I've never actually seen a design like this, and there was a little bit of a learning curve just because they are so close to each other, but these are pretty perfect in my opinion. In fact, other than the fact that you cannot rebind them on the fly and you need a computer or phone application to bind them, I do realize a lot of gamers don't have a PC and you can still get the rear buttons up and working on your controller with the phone app. Surface plastics used aren't the best. That's one of the only things I don't like about these rear buttons, that only being able to bind an application. They're not loud by any means, and ergonomically, for me, for my hands, I'm 5'11", these are what I'm working with, these feel perfect because you have access to the bottom two with the tips of your middle finger and the inner two by rolling in with that little ball, that bone of your middle finger. So you can cover all four of them simultaneously with just your middle fingers, and it feels crisp to press those buttons. I got zero false actuations, so the force, the strength required to actuate them is a perfect balance. I like them. I just wish you could bind them on the fly, maybe holding down the profile button for a few seconds and then hold down a rear paddle, or button I should say, and face button that you want bound. 8.5 out of 10. They'd probably get a 10 out of 10 if these had better surface plastics and you could bind them on the fly.
Yeah, I don't really care about adjusting my vibration force motors on the fly or engaging a digital trigger lock system. Come on, that's not the same as a physical trigger lock system, which this controller actually has. But what I do supremely care about is, can you bind these rear buttons on the fly, which it appears as if you cannot. What you can do is swap between four profiles, but that doesn't really matter in order to make these buttons usable out of the box, or at least the configuration that you would like, because you don't want some random 4 buttons chosen for you in the back of your controller. Nobody wants that. I'm going to download the software and hope it doesn't bash my computer up and down the block with viruses. Better it happened to me than you. Look how the red screen on my face, redder than the devil's D.
It's red as the devil's dick.
So there is 2 mobile versions of this application, which I'm going to do my best to avoid at all costs, unless it is the only option for customizing this controller and mapping the rear buttons. But it looks like this is a PC application. I love downloading zip files from a .cn. It's also fucking trickling right now. She's slow. All right, and inside this folder, let's move me to the side. You're gonna have all this stuff. I'm gonna... Was that the right thing to do? No, that's just an icon. So it says this is the app. All right, let's extract all. If this melts my computer, I'm gonna be really sad about it. Okay, that's what you should be seeing there. Game Center. Now that's the icon again. You love doing it. Yes, sir. Cool. Plug your controller in via USB-C. I do like the controller's plug and play. You don't need to toggle it on with the on switch. It just works if you plug the cable in. Never mind. Just the message on screen just contradicted what I literally just said to you guys. Switch it on. If it's a Zeus controller, it'll vibrate in your hand. Yes, I do want to do that. Thank you. It prompted me to do the update, the initial firmware update. I'm pleasantly surprised by it. Now, do not unplug your controller. Don't even touch it. Set it on your desk. Fucking wipe your hands of it. Alrighty then. This is the software application. You cannot pinch the sides to resize it. You cannot snap it to the sides. You cannot full screen it. Little better Windows optimization would be cool. You do have your 4 profiles over here, which are color coded, and that will be associated with the RGB lights on your controller. You've got a diagnostic tool down here. Key test. You press buttons on your controller. It shows you that you're pressing those buttons. It works in real time, really fast. In order to do things with the controller, select a profile. I'm going with the default one. This is your lighting control. I'm going to go ahead and just turn that shit all the way off. Now, those changes do happen in real time. I want to turn the brightness to 0. I want to turn it off completely. Is that an option? That's depressing as shit as well. There's only 2 RGB modes: breathing, which is fading in and out, and then static, normal, on. Also, only 5 steps of brightness adjustment instead of a slider where you have dozens of steps of adjustment. I'm just trying to turn it completely off right now. I don't think you can. I think you can dim it to this level. So much too big of a word for a controller application. How long do you want the controller to wait with no inputs before it goes into a sleep mode? 0 minutes. Yep. As soon as I turn the controller on, I want it to turn right back off. How about 5 minutes? not an option. You have 0 to 15, not much control there. Also, this is your thumbstick sensitivity curves where you can set up custom curves. It's a really small little customization box. And then as you're making these changes, make sure you hit apply to controller. It'll say save successfully. So this AI down here, you can set up Windows functionality like screen recording, but it doesn't make it clear where you're actually recording to. And anyone that's going to be recording like gameplay clips or anything is probably just going to be using a program like OBS.
So I wouldn't use any of this silly shit.
You do have separate profiles for PC and Nintendo Switch. That's 4 different profiles for each, a total of 8. Although swapping between them on the fly doesn't work like that because you only have 4 total. And then you have a battery indicator, although my controller's plugged in, so it's just going to show me that it's at 100, I guess. It's Configure Assistant over here. First of all, you're going to name your profile. Clicking on the keyboard, nothing is happening. You need to click this first. Stupid. Is that Poppy or Pappy? Pappy. There it is. Oh, you can't. I've hit the character cap. Great. Limited. Again, cannot turn the RGB completely off. Vibration. Cool. Next step. Now this is where you're going to rebind the rear buttons. An extended key down here is going to be your extra buttons, the rear buttons, as well as those top bumpers. So you click it and then you press it on the controller. So I want M4 to be B,
M1 X. So I'm a visual learner. I kind of like if there was a little picture of the controller that showed you which button you were assigning, but you actually have to look on the back of your controller, turn it around, and then click on the controller, which button that you want. It's not that big of a deal, but it is a little time consuming, and you'll probably only do this once, set up the 4 profiles, and then you'll have them to swap on the fly. A little more in-depth information, and then you have that summary page, like a dashboard, and this is separated by the left and right analog stick. I like that. Soma to sensory mapping to blah bibbidi, commonly used in shooting targeting, driving, secondary action, and other gaming scenarios. If the slightest movement is not responsive, you have to add compensate for the dead zone of the game's joystick. This seems like a feature that is going to complicate things by using it, so I'm just going to skip it. And then you do have control of the 3.5mm headphone jack, works as an equalizer. In order to customize it, you actually have to click this little circle, pops up over here, and then you hit save. You also have a joystick and trigger calibration mode, but if it's not broke, don't fix it. You can actually introduce issues that weren't there initially, so only do this calibration if you are having a problem where you start to develop stick drift, as these are potentiometer thumbstick modules, or if one of your triggers gets janky on you. Hit complete, and now you have this profile. You can hit apply, and we have a new profile 4, which has been called limited. So the software suite, I'm gonna give it a 6 out of 10. It's okay. It's got the bare bones functionality, binding the rear buttons. You can't turn the RGB off completely, not the smoothest interface. 6 out of 10. Getting our first input lag or delay tests, wired, tethered, and X input tests. We are going to see, holy, 1 millisecond of input lag or delay on slightly over 1000 hertz stock clock, targeting a 1000 hertz stock clock. Jitter, super low, freakishly consistent. Let's run another. That was just number 1. The test completes very quickly because the computer's receiving those 1000 samples super quick. There's one outlier. It's going to be a large number from when I just started. Run another. Perfect. No outliers, consistent, 1000 hertz polling rate. Let's check the wireless dongle. Now for me, the dongle was paired right out of the box, but I saw a bunch of articles and complaints and things online floating around of the dongle not being paired with the controller and fixes for that. But this thing just worked plug and play as the good Lord intended. Rotating it in a circle, you are going to see 4 milliseconds of input lag or delay on a 250 hertz stock clock. Tons of outliers in there. Yeah, you can see those little spikes of inconsistency popping up to say hello. Those will get your head blown off. In a shooter, I'll tell you that right about now. You can see them here, all those 7s popping up to say cockle-doodle-doo, how the fuck do you do? Consistency, not very great. Minimum, maximum, far, jitter, not too high, but higher than I'd like. 250 hertz. Now, unfortunately, neither the dongle or the wired tethered method
was able to be overclocked past that 1000 hertz stock polling rate, which is a very respectable stock polling rate, but that was only wired. When you're going wireless with the dongle, you're getting 4 milliseconds.
So my advice, if you are a competitive player, you're picking this thing up to shred faces, click noggins on the PC side of the house, go wired for sure. But on the Switch side of the house, it just connects via Bluetooth like a normal Switch controller.
As for converter or adapter support, with the use of the Brook Accessories XB2, which still works, I've been hearing a lot of reports that it's blocked, locked, or jammed up somebody's ass. It still works perfectly good, and even when it does become blocked, I have another device on standby. I don't do the whole platform limitation thing. There was some sputtery connection over Bluetooth, unfortunately, and on the PlayStation PlayStation side of the house, I was only able to get it to recognize or pair up with the adapter once, but I couldn't actually control anything, so not really paired up in any meaningful way. So unfortunately, no PlayStation support that I could get up and running, and Xbox was a little bit sporadic as well. As for the pros, cons, and verdict, do I recommend the Zeus 2 from Beitong for $140 or whatever you can find it on AliExpress and sites of the such, probably like 80 bucks or something. There is weird converter or adapter support, couldn't even get the sucker running on PlayStation, and it was a little bit sporadic on Xbox as well. Take that out of the equation because I don't really think anybody's picking up this controller to use on Xbox or PlayStation because there's such better options in the price point for both those platforms. Switch, very limited platform when it comes to custom controllers. You got the PowerA Fusion Pro and a bunch of sub $80 budget pro controllers that I've tested. This would be by far the most feature-rich pro controller that you could get for the Switch, and it also has 6-axis motion sensing. If it does have Amiibo, I couldn't get it working or scanning. I tried every surface of the controller and I couldn't get it to scan my Amiibos. So I do think this would be a great Switch controller, but do you really want to spend $140 on a Switch controller? I personally don't, and I know a lot of Switch players don't want to spend that kind of quiche on a controller. But looking at it through the lens of a $140 pro controller for PC, there's definitely better options out there in my personal opinion. Personally, would rather own a Vader 3, no, that's the wrong number, Vader 4 Pro, which is a $75 to $90 controller depending on where you pick it up. Has Hall effect, has adjustable thumbstick tension modules, works on Switch as well, has more compatibility with Xbox and PlayStation where it wasn't all sputtery and janky. And if you want to spend less shekels, like half of that, around the $45 mark, GameSir dominates that price point with several models for the Switch and PC that have a ton of features such as Hall effect and remappable rear buttons. Oh, when I say Hall effect, I don't mean the search engine optimization Hall effect triggers that Beitong's sporting on the Amazon listing. I mean real Hall effect thumbstick modules, what we care about. At the end of the day, a lot of the features that are implemented with the Zeus are actually more detrimental to it. For example, the swappable face buttons. Typical stock membrane buttons feel like a stock controller. Get them out of here.
Get the fuck out! Get out of my club!
Optical switches don't really transfer over like a keyboard or mouse when it comes to the benefit of quick actuation by having a beam of light being broken, and they feel kind of weird and sound kind of shitty. The mechanicals also didn't feel or sound great, which is unfortunate because I'm a mechanical button slut when it comes to, I don't know, I had to call myself such a thing. I like mechanical buttons when it comes to controllers, and these ones I really didn't enjoy that much. They have some numbers on their website talking about actuation force and stuff. They didn't feel good. Tons of included swappable accessories, no included carrying case to hold all of them, and the only ones that I actually liked were the metal variants. I ended up throwing out the plastic versions because they just felt bad. I forgot the KontrolFreeks section earlier, so I always recommend popping off your thumbstick cap so you don't put undue pressure on your modules when you're popping on your KontrolFreeks. These are white Galaxies for the PlayStation 4 and 5. They use the same thumbstick caps. They're called hybrids. Little phlegm in there. Oh, god damn it. That feels like it's going to damage the cap. You could force it on. I don't want to. Feels like it's going to damage something. The Xbox cap absolutely won't work as it is the smallest in diameter. The Switch Pro caps do pop on. They're very snug. So if you want licensed KontrolFreeks, go for the Nintendo Switch Pro variant, which they have a big catalog of several designs. For the Switch Pro, I do have an exclusive discount linked in the description below. And the reason we did that KontrolFreek compatibility section right now during the verdict is I was about to say I don't like the way the stock caps feel. This little design on here doesn't feel great. It's pretty slippery in the center section and uncomfortable with this little triangle fancy pants design on here. I do like that there is different heights included, although the mid rises should be high rises or an additional set should be included. The RGB lighting I thought looked terrible and also has minimal control in the software app. You can't turn it off completely. There's only two modes, fading and static. And I feel like that feature, as well as the swappable face buttons, could have been completely ditched, thus bringing this down to about a $90, $100 controller, which would have been still not very recommendable, considering it rocks potentiometer thumbstick modules, and almost all of its competitors have made the jump into the deep end with Hall effects, which could be implemented terribly to where they're actually worse than potentiometers like Alps, but they didn't risk it for a biscuit here. And I will say the potentiometers on board, the Moco Cocoa Choco Beans over here.
I've tasted other cocos. This is the best.
They did perform really good in Gamepad Tester as well as gameplay, but fact of the matter is they are potentiometer and could get stick drift for you at any possible moment. Cosmetically, not a big fan, but transfers right on over to build quality. Looks like cheapness, and it feels really hollow and clacky and like it could fall apart with one drop onto a hard surface. Replenish my HP bars. God damn you. I personally feel like there's too many setbacks, cons, or limitations with this controller no matter what platform you're going to be using it on. I can't recommend it, but it does have some really cool features. The 1000 hertz pulling rate out of the box. The rubber grips, I really do like the way they feel. And the rear buttons, some of my favorites. Why can't you rebind them on the fly? The Zeus 2 is linked in the description below. That is going to be the Amazon listing, as I mentioned during the summary section earlier. Drop in the comment section below what you Stallions and Stallionettes are using in the controller department, and I will see you next time I see you. Peace. If you enjoyed the video, liking it helps it to get seen by more gamers, so this information will reach and assist them as well. Much like the back of the TV, I've got plugs for all of my socials down there in the description below. And your wallet will greatly thank you if you check the description, because there are exclusive discounts on a ton of products, including controllers, KontrolFreeks, keyboards, mouse pads, clothes, and energy drinks. And keep in mind that you, the viewer, keep this channel running. The more Stallions and Stallionettes trotting around the stable, the better, so mollywop that subscribe button like it owes you money, and we'll have the same amount of fun tomorrow.